Hey, I'm Matt with Let's Talk Music, and I'm here with Scott Martin. How you doing this evening, sir?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I am great, man. Just talking to you. Before we got started, you mentioned that you're getting ready to play here shortly. Where are you at?
Yep, I'm in Brooklyn here, and I'm over at one of the joints I usually play, and this one's called H&H Reserve, and
Okay,
we're gonna do an acoustic thing.
cool. So, Scott, you just released an album June 9th
Mhm.
called Scott Martin and the Grand Disaster. Uh, Tell me about that album name, man.
Well, sure, yeah. The name of the album came from I was in a band called Bulletproof Messenger back when I was like cutting my teeth in my 20s, and we had a single called Grand Disaster. And it was a heavy modern rock band. And I just liked the name of that. I thought it was a great metaphor for, I don't know, I guess just living in general. And as it turns out, the drummer from that band wound up playing drums on this record. And I was like, this is too good of a coincidence. So that's kind of how it all came to pass. It was kind of like an homage to where I'd been before. But also, you know, uh, the last couple of years have been pretty wild. So I think it sort of fit in that way too.
Right now, Bulletproof Messenger. How long was you guys together?
We pretty much were active from about 2006 until maybe 2013. We did come back together during the pandemic and released, I think, three or four singles. So it's not that we're disactive or whatever. It's just that guys wind up doing different things in their lives, and bands go their own ways.
Right, right. I get you. This is a full length album. Uh,
Yes,
how many tracks?
we got 9.
Nine.
Mhm.
Cool. Which brings me to this. I mean, I listened to the newest one, Head Over Heels. Um, Really dug it, dude. It's got a funky vibe to it. Kind of almost I don't know. It almost puts me in mind of like some '90s alternative type rock. I don't
Oh,
know.
thanks, man. No, that's cool because that's like what I grew up listening to. So to like have that comparison is a really wonderful thing, man. It brings me a lot of happiness. Thank you. Because I was like into bands like Live and Matchbox 20 and whatnot, and of course the grungy stuff before that. And that's
Right,
really how I learned to play guitar. Between that and classic rock. So it pretty much still lives in me, I guess.
right. And I've read a lot on your press release about your coming up on guitar.
hmm
Can you tell me a little bit about like from the beginning to now?
Oh, sure, man. Yeah. I always liked singing. My folks would always play music in the car, and as little me, probably singing along to the Eagles or the Beatles or Fleetwood Mac or whatever. And then when I was about 14, my cousin Doug gave me an REM CD, and he gave me it was a collection of REM's early hits, eponymous it was called,
Hmm.
and I was obsessed. I mean, I played this thing over and over and over, and eventually, after learning all the tunes and going, this is like my favorite band ever. I wanted to kind of know how songs were made. I wanted to like get inside them and figure it out. And so my dad had played guitar when he was younger, and I found his old guitar. And it wasn't a very good guitar. It was very hard to play. The strings were like a mile off the fretboard. But I slowly started to learn how to play, my favorite songs from my favorite bands. And from that, I wound up branching out. I really got into classic rock. I was living in South Jersey, and all the guys that I was friends with were into like Pink Floyd and Aerosmith. And Boston was a record that I absolutely loved. Boston's first record, and Santana, so on and so forth. And I just learned to play a little better and a little more over time. And, when I was in my 20s, I was back in New York and I started playing in bands around Long Island. And when I joined Bulletproof, we were in a van trailer on tour doing our thing. And I was like, all right, yeah, this is it. This is how I want to do things. And after that, like I said, bands kind of go their separate ways.
Hmm.
And I became a session guy in New York City, and I've been playing here for 10 years or so, just whatever genre that people call me for. And I honestly like that the best because variety is great. Variety is wonderful. It teaches you different things. And so all the techniques that I've learned from 10 years of being a guy that's just the guy you call
Right.
has been wonderful. And as far as writing music, I think that having played in bands that do a lot of pop covers, wedding bands, things like that, you sort of learn how a song is built without even really learning it because you're playing them. So when you go to sit down and write something, your ear's going to take you to whatever it is that you've been playing, listening to for so long. And I
Right.
think that was a really valuable part of my development as an artist.
That's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, cheers. Yeah.
What was really cool though is I watched the video for your cover of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, man, you saw that. That's awesome. Thank you.
And I was like that. I mean, I've just I don't think I've ever seen that. You know,
Hmm.
I don't really peruse YouTube a whole lot. You know what I mean? So if it's somebody else did it, cool. But I really loved your version, and I mean, according to the numbers, 6 million views, 200,000 likes, 40,000 shares, and 75,000 freaking followers, dude. That's amazing.
It was the weirdest thing, man. Like I don't know. I put it up and all of a sudden it took off. I think I was watching the World Cup actually, and suddenly like numbers started pouring, and I was like, "Oh, this is wild, man!" You know. But I loved Ennio Morricone as a composer, and I was really into spaghetti westerns, when I was younger, and I started watching them again, and I was like, I could do this on guitar, and I could do this a certain way, and I guess I just hit on something that's a little different than the original, and whether that be good or bad is up to the listener. But I really enjoyed doing it, and I'm probably going to do another one at some point. Because I don't know, man. I love guitar, and I love crafting things with that. There's no shortage of sounds, nothing like that. So it's a good paintbrush to have.
So, which do you prefer, man? Are you more of a do you prefer more of being a guitarist or a vocalist?
Um, it's funny actually. I had this discussion the other day. I don't necessarily like being the center of attention. So being a vocalist and being a front man is hard in that respect.
Right.
Um, but I love writing songs and singing songs. So of course you just do what you have to do to get that out there. And I like to sing with people and not so much at people, as it were.
Mhm.
But being a guitarist is pretty cool because you can kind of lay back a little bit and add to whatever song is going on. You can listen to your vocalist or you can listen to your band and throw things in that elevate the song. So I think that even though when I write a song, I start with the lyrics and I start with the vocal melody, usually I'll come up with a phrase and go, that's a good phrase. I'm going to write a song around that. What I really like is when I get in the studio and I get to take, my guitar, whatever guitars are there. Maybe I'll use an acoustic, maybe I'll use a Gretsch. It depends. Mostly I use tellies, but I like creating the bed that all those vocals are going to sit in. So I think they do go hand in hand. Um, but generally speaking, when writing a pop song, I'm all about being a vocalist first and a guitarist second. But if I'm playing, with the band as whatever, man, I just love playing guitar. It's awesome. It's really the greatest thing on earth.
It is, and it takes. I mean, some people just have a natural talent for it, but
Mhm.
a lot of people it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of patience, a lot of just willingness to learn the instrument. I mean, and I know I tried to play guitar and I didn't have a very good teacher, so I got frustrated really quickly and kind of gave up. But I had talked to a friend lately, and he was talking about how he had his guitar all set up and his Marshall, all of his effects that he's ever wanted, blah blah blah. And he's like, I sold it all. He's like, I just gave
Mhm.
up. And I'm like, what the hell? Well, then I talked to him about 3 months later, and he's like, man, he's like, I bought this Schecter and I had it put, I had it set up, when I bought it, and he's like, this thing damn near plays itself. He's like, this shit
Yep.
is good. So, I've at times, I've gone to a music store or I've gone to a pawn shop and I've looked at guitars like, man, or even online, looking at a Jackson or something, and I mean, it's just I think now maybe I have a little more patience, but I don't know, being older, I guess if I'm like going to retain it, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's because I mean, I remember the basic chords. I don't really, I remember like the beginnings of songs, but I don't really, know the bar chords or the extensions and stuff like that. And I was never really shown that. And
Hmm.
I mean, I know that I watch a lot of videos of people playing guitar and they're using a lot of bar chords and stuff. So, um, But yeah, man, I applaud you for, sticking with it and doing what you're doing.
Oh, thanks, man. I mean, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Like I don't know where I got the willpower from, but I was also like a 14-year-old angsty teenager, so I think a lot of it was that.
Right.
Like, but I taught guitar for like 20 years at the music school in my hometown, which, I came back from college and the proprietor was like, I need a guitar sub like tomorrow. Are you good? And I was like, yeah, I guess I'll be here at 3 p.m., and it actually became one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. But what was so much fun to teach people was that in guitar, as far as, if you're making a bar chord, you're making an F or a B minor or whatever it is, the devil's like in the details. If you move your thumb just a certain way, it'll allow you to actually make that shape. And everybody's like, I can't do that. I can't do it. I'm like, but you can because everything's connected. But you have to learn that, like, if you make a bar chord, a lot of people will squeeze their arm into the side because it takes so much stress, right? You
Right.
got to learn to put your arm out to the side because you actually have to make like a right angle with your wrists. And that's like
Okay.
the hardest thing to do. But this is why repetition is so important because you may not be able to do it for 4 weeks, but on like 4 weeks plus one day, you'll wake up and all of a sudden you've got it.
Right. Right.
And it's just a little things like, why don't you bend your finger just a little bit more that way, which feels counterintuitive, but you do it and suddenly your chord rings very clearly. And it's all the little stuff like that that is so immensely frustrating in the beginning, right? But that's the stuff that when you get it, you go, oh my gosh, that is so interesting. That's what it was. It was just this little thing. Um, but gosh, I mean, I've been playing that for like 25 years, I guess, and
Right.
it's 25 years of learning these little things. And what's so rewarding about guitar is that it will consistently, I've found, like reteach me how to play guitar. There is always something new that you are learning about it. You never know everything, and you can never know everything. There's more music than you can ever play in your life.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely agree with that. Because it's like shit, man. Every day somebody's coming up with something new. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
and I tell you, like one of the things, and this isn't a comparison, but this is something that I found really cool was like when I first started listening to, Head Over Heels, the ground guitar work actually kind of reminded me of U2's Where the Streets Have No Name.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. The Edge was such a huge influence on me, man. Like, and the Edge is the reason I bought a delay pedal when I was like 15 years old. And, my parents had a compilation and Pride was on it and the Name of Love or whatever. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I have to find out. And when I found out what it was, I was like, all right, can I get a ride to the music store and like, can you guys lend me some money? I need to get I think I got a Boss DD3 was my first delay pedal, and it was awesome. And it's been a huge part of my sound ever since because I'm not a drummer, but I really like rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And as a guitar player, like really being able to create rhythm in the space that's left for a guitar. So like a delay pedal, man, like give me some dotted eighth, and I am very, very happy. You can do all sorts of stuff with that.
Oh yeah. Now, do you use a wah pedal at all?
Yes, yeah, I have a couple wahs, and while I don't use a wah, I think on this record, like live, I'll touch on wah a lot. I mean, the reason I bought a wah pedal was because I heard White Room by Cream,
Mm-hmm.
and Clapton, has that wah going coming into the second verse or whatever, and I'm like, all right, I need this sound. What's that? And went out and bought a Crybaby as a kid, and um, but yeah, wah is super super cool because it also, for whatever reason, makes it almost more fluid to play with your left hand. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can technically play faster when you're using a wah because of the way it scoops out frequencies as you're pumping it up and down.
Right.
Very expressive thing though. Turns you into a voice.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, I did read that it said COVID impacted you deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Was that by did you lose somebody close to you, or was that by your music?
Well, it was so I'm from New York City, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um, man, we got trashed in the first couple months of COVID. Man, it was really bad. I mean, I remember the weekend that everything really started going to hell here, and I had played a wedding, 500-person wedding probably. My band was 13 people deep that night, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
playing this place called Gustavinos, which is the 59th Street Bridge is an old bridge made of stone arches, right? And
Mm-hmm.
underneath it is a venue that they built. It's very cool. Sounds terrible because it's all marble and tile, but it's really cool looking. So
Right.
people love to get married there, and that was the gig I was doing. And most of the wedding caught it that night, and everybody in my band except for me and the percussion player caught it. And my band leader was in bed for 3 weeks, lost 36 pounds. He was very sick, and just there was nothing to do here. You could not go anywhere. Everybody, man, they had refrigerator trucks down the street, with because they ran out of morgue space. It was really the wildest thing I've ever seen,
Oh,
and it was terrifying, quite frankly.
yes.
And you're suddenly reevaluating everything in your life, especially as a musician, because you couldn't do what you do. I couldn't play for a long time. There was nowhere to play, and a lot of the venues were closing. Um,
Mhm.
and that was a really hard thing to deal with because for a long time I was like, well, like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And
Right.
it was just really hard to watch your city go to shit, quite frankly.
Trust me, I know it happened here too.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So when that's the kind of like the deep impact that it had. But the bright side of that was that I couldn't play live, so I was like, well, I want to still make music, so I guess I'm going to have to learn to use Logic and learn to record. And that was the most powerful tool I think I've ever given myself. Is learning how to lay stuff down that's in my head.
Right.
And there's some tracks on this record that wouldn't have been finished if I hadn't learned that. It wouldn't have been done.
Yeah, and I've discussed that with quite a few musicians. How they would say that, they were picking up momentum and everything was going great, and then bam, they hit the COVID wall.
Yep.
But I think for a lot of musicians also, it was kind of an opportunity because
Yeah.
now you're stuck. And all you can do is, like you said, play your music and stuff. And I think that since COVID, the quality of music that's being produced is better than pre-COVID
Mm-hmm.
because more people, more musicians were sitting down. They were writing quality lyrics. They were writing quality, guitar riffs. And, with modern day technology, they can share it with all their, bandmates and come up with something. And
100%.
a lot of guys were like, it was a blessing in that way. But
Yeah. I mean, I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, like, the thing that it gave me that a lot of musicians that are working musicians especially don't have is it gave you the gift of time,
Mm-hmm.
which if you put time into music, what comes out is, you know, usually substantially different than something that you
Right.
would. Yeah. So 100%, man. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I know I'm not going to like name any names, but I know there's quite a few large bands that are out there that they pump it out like that, song
Yeah.
after song after song after album after album, and you're like, okay, this one's just kind of some cookie cutter bullshit,
Absolutely, man.
you know.
Absolutely.
But I mean, like I said, I've noticed and especially with the bands that I interview, and it's not me kissing your ass because if I didn't like something you do, I'd be like, oh man, that one wasn't so great, but I like this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I feel like that these uh these guys that I've interviewed they really took that time instead of like getting down and like, oh man, what's going to happen next or whatever. They kept doing what they were doing, like yourself,
Mhm.
and they've made some great music. I mean, and like my goal someday is to start like an internet radio where musicians like yourself or the other 100 or well, let me think now, 202 musicians that I've interviewed can you know have their music heard, because
Mhm.
not every radio station plays it, you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I actually had a band that I interviewed that was on our local radio station, and it shocked the shit out of me. And they was in this thing called Choose It or Lose It. So if they get voted, they win. They move on to the next round. They were on it for 4.5 weeks as the champ.
Damn.
Yeah, and
Damn.
I was like, wow, So I mean, that's what I'm saying. People really dig the the smaller bands. I think you know what I
They
mean.
really do. I've noticed that too, man. Like you don't get heard, but then when you do get heard, people are like, "Well, shit, that is so much different." or it has so much more of that magic that we love in music than what is commercially put at you.
Right.
So and hats off to you for wanting to make an outlet for that, man. I appreciate that deeply.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's what I'm all about. I mean, this is, let's talk music is what it is. Let's talk music.
Hmm.
We'll
Yeah.
we'll talk a little bit about you and your career. You and I just jibber jabber about some music, and I get it on YouTube. Hopefully, some people see it. They discover you. I list your videos, your socials, all that stuff. It's all about me trying to get you out there, and for me, the reward for me is just talking to you guys. I've loved music since I was a kid, and like my mom used to say all the time when I was a kid, like if you paid as much attention to school as you did to music, you'd be a straight A student.
Yep.
I was the guy that would go buy the cassette tape. I'd open up the jacket and I'd read everything that's printed inside that thing. I'd read the lyrics, who, wrote the songs, who produced it, whatever.
Oh yeah, and that was the wonderful thing about a physical copy was that you had that when you bought, you'd go out and buy the record and you could look at those liner notes and study them, and it was, like I said, I was a big REM fan, and that's kind of also part of my sense of humor now. Is their sense of humor was so very dry and very strange, but a
Yes.
lot of their liner notes were filled with that stuff, and I was like, this is freaking hilarious. So you almost feel like you're knowing the band because you're able to pick up a copy and read the liner notes of this record.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, man, I mean, by trade, I'm a truck driver. So my current job, I'm home every day. But
Mm-hmm.
when COVID hit, we was essential workers. We was
Yeah.
we was out there the entire time, and like, I was wholeheartedly against the vaccine for a long time. And finally I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. What's it gonna hurt? you know
Right.
Thankfully I've never got it. My wife got it, my stepdaughter got it, but they got the vaccine too. Theirs was less severe. They just had like physical pain, the
Yeah.
body
The
aches.
body aches.
Right. And she describes it as like the worst feeling she's ever had in her life. And I mean, there was a couple guys at work that got it and everything, but and also, when I was on the road, I did that for 14 years. I've been all over NYC, man. I love that. It sucks in a semi,
Yeah,
but
I'm sure, dude. Oh man, I can't imagine.
yeah,
I can't imagine, man. Cheers to you.
I've been to Brooklyn and the Bronx, and yeah, everywhere but Manhattan. Thank God I never had to go to downtown Manhattan with a semi, man.
Oh, yeah, Fi would be absolute misery business, man. Like,
Right. I
Jesus.
mean, that shit's bad with a car, let alone
Yeah, you damn right.
so. But anyways, brother, I know you got a gig to play, so I appreciate you talking with me. I'm gonna let
Oh, it
you,
was a pleasure.
get ready. I hope you have a hell of a show, and
Thank you, man.
I'll look forward to some. One last question: when can we expect another single?
Another single. We just shot the video for single number two. It's called Rock and Roll Heart. That's the second track on the record, actually, right? And we shot that last night. So that single probably, I'd say, mid and July.
Sweet.
Yeah, man.
I will look forward to it, man. I done subscribe to your channel. I'll look you up on Facebook and everything. But Scott, thank you for your time and have a great show, buddy.
Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you, and good to talk to you, and talk to you soon, man.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right, cheers.